Hey, you made it. Tonight's story is quiet, warm, and a little forbidden. You're about to share something with a queen, something soft, something private, something history never told out loud. But first, if you enjoy these sleepy journeys through time, take a second to like the video and subscribe. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It's always beautiful to see how far our little time machine travels. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights. Maybe play a little background noise. And let's begin. Tonight, you share a bath with Marie Antoinette. The room is warm and quiet, wrapped in the soft perfume of rose water and lavender. Candlelight flickers gently across the marble floor, casting golden reflections on the steaming bath ahead. The air hums with comfort, as if time itself has slowed down just for you. She's already there, waiting. Not as a queen, not as a figure of history, but as a woman. Marie Antoinette, in all her humanness, sits partially submerged in the warm water, her back turned to you, her bare shoulders glistening beneath the candle's soft glow. The water carries the weight of the day off your shoulders. Every breath you take is laced with the scent of soaked herbs and the softness of something sacred. You don't speak at first. You don't need to. The silence says enough. It speaks of trust, of permission, of a moment carved out of history and hidden from judgment. Do you know how rare this is? She asks. To simply exist, without duty, without a mask. She glances back just once, and her eyes meet yours. Her body is relaxed, unguarded. There are no guards at the door, no courtiers waiting outside. Just two people, suspended in warmth and time. Or, at least, I stopped where they could see. Just a girl, somewhere behind the crown, finally allowed to speak. So I stopped. No grandeur, no rehearsed cadence. Close enough to notice the way the candlelight dances in her eyes. But I never stopped wanting to be held. Just as two souls who found each other in the quietest part of the world. Fingers brush gently, uncertain at first, then stay. She doesn't interrupt. She lets your words sink into the water between you, soaking into the silence like something sacred. Not as lovers, not as strangers. She watches you, but not like a queen studies her subjects. As if even air tastes different in your presence. The walls around you feel distant, blurred by heat and candlelight. Nothing matters here but presence. She watches you like someone who hasn't been seen in a very long time. Not with command, but with curiosity. She nods toward the water beside her, a silent invitation. And you step forward. To live without eyes always watching. To be ordinary. As you ease yourself in, the warmth surrounds you instantly. You sit across from her but close. I'm tired, she says softly. Not from the world. From pretending. Her voice is quieter than you imagined. She reaches forward and dips her hand into the water, trailing small ripples between you. You nod, because you do know. Tell me I'm not just a story, she whispers. Tell me I'm real to you. She leans back slightly, letting her hair float freely behind her, like a dark silk ribbon. When I was younger, she says, they told me queens do not cry. She looks at you again, this time a little longer. The confession hangs in the air like steam, rising and fading but never truly disappearing. Her hand moves through the water again, and this time it finds yours. The fire in the hearth crackles, its warmth joining that of the bath. You begin to speak, and she listens. About your world, your dreams, your solitude. I envy that, she says when you're done. And you realize something then. She doesn't want escape. She wants connection, not rebellion, but relief. She looks at you, really looks, and her lips part slightly, not to speak, but to breathe. She leans forward a little, her hand still in yours, and the water shifts gently between your bodies. And you do. Not with grand declarations. Just a look. Just a hand that doesn't let go. The night deepens. The warmth lingers. And Versailles, for once, is silent. She doesn't speak for a while, and neither do you. But her breathing tells you she hasn't drifted to sleep yet. It's steady, thoughtful, the kind of rhythm that only comes when someone feels completely safe. The water has cooled just slightly, but she doesn't seem to notice. They didn't know, of course. Queens aren't supposed to crave apples at midnight. She smiles to herself. But I tiptoe through the corridors and steal one, then sit by the window and pretend I was just a girl with nothing to worry about. Her body is relaxed now, her shoulders no longer carrying the weight she wears in public. Her crown may not be in the room, but its imprint is always on her. You find yourself studying the way her fingers float just beneath the surface, moving gently, unconsciously, like she's trying to stir something lost long ago. Versailles is beautiful, yes, but it's also a prison built from gold. Every room reminds me of what I couldn't be. Every mirror reflects a woman they invented, not the one I became. They say a storm is coming tomorrow. Maybe it's already started, but not here, not yet. The sky outside is dark, heavy with clouds. But for now, the world inside this room feels untouched by anything sharp. No politics, no revolution, no ending. Her eyes are closed, but her mind isn't far. She's not asleep. She's remembering. But I do know I'll remember this. Tonight. You. The stillness. She's offering you the rarest thing she has ever possessed. Herself, without performance. The light flickers low, painting her face with soft amber shadows. She stretches her legs slightly, sending ripples across the surface of the water. Then she closes her eyes once more. You were only meant to listen. But her gaze holds yours, not with pressure, but with softness. So you tell her something. Not profound, not poetic, just real. Something from your own quiet world. A memory, a feeling, a thought that's never been spoken aloud. Her eyes don't leave yours. And when you finish, she smiles. A younger Marie, barefoot on cold stone, holding an apple like a treasure, while the world outside waited for her to become someone she wasn't ready to be. The hush of the water, the sigh of the fire, the gentle beating of your hearts. And in that rhythm, something ancient is happening. Something history won't record, but memory will. I used to sneak into the kitchen at night, she says suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. You picture it now. She senses it, and she lets it be. That version of me, she says, she's still in here somewhere. Sometimes I wonder if she ever really grew up, or if I just built walls around her. She shifts her head slightly, eyes still closed. She is just a woman in warm water, and you are just the person who didn't look away. She looks at it, at the way her skin glistens under the firelight, at the rings she no longer wears. You're close, but not imposing. Present, but not demanding. Maybe that's what tonight is, a crack in the wall. You rest your hand lightly on the edge of the tub again. There were days I hated this place, she continues, her voice softer now. Her hand surfaces slowly from the water. I took them off weeks ago, she says, answering your unspoken question. I wanted to feel like myself, whatever was left of that. She dips her fingers back into the bath and glances toward the window. You follow her gaze. I don't know what happens next, she says. There's something in her voice that has shifted. It's no longer only about comfort. It's about truth. She turns slightly toward you, eyes half open, lips parted just enough to speak again. Tell me something, she asks. Anything. The request is simple, but you hesitate. You aren't prepared to speak. Thank you, she says, for not turning this into a story about me, for letting it be a moment about us. The logs in the fireplace crack again. Would you believe me, she says, if I told you I feel more like a queen tonight than I ever did on the throne? You don't answer with words. You don't need to. The room has fallen into its own quiet rhythm. She's not royalty here. She's not scandal or symbol. You lose track of time. The flicker of the fire, The gentle hum of the room and the rhythm of her breathing have all merged into one continuous moment. There's a comfort in not knowing what hour it is. Here, minutes don't matter. Only stillness does. She shifts slightly, her bare shoulder brushing against the silk towel hanging near the rim of the tub. Her eyes remain closed, but her lips part again, as if she's been thinking of something and has finally decided to say it. To step outside the palace and disappear into a life no one expected of me. Maybe I'd live above a bakery in some small town. Wake up with flour in my hair and warm bread in the air. I sometimes imagined what it would be like to vanish, she says softly. I'd wear simple clothes, no corsets, and I'd laugh too loudly because no one would be listening. She smiles faintly at the thought. They'd call me Madame something. She opens her eyes now, slowly, and looks at you with something quiet in her gaze. Would you have found me there? I think I would have liked that version of my life. You smile, just enough to answer her without speaking. But before you can, she answers the question you didn't speak. She closes her eyes again. Tonight, I don't feel like a queen. And that's exactly why I feel alive. Do you know what they used to say about me? That I spent too much, danced too much, bathed too often. They turned my comfort into scandal, my privacy into spectacle. It was never really about the money or the dances or the water. It's the kind of thing someone says when they've reached the edge of a dream and can't quite tell where the world ends and imagination begins. It was about control. Their flames flicker softly, casting a golden hush across her face. The room feels smaller, safer, as though the walls themselves have leaned in to protect this moment. Marie hasn't spoken for a while. Her hand rests lightly in yours, her fingers no longer tense. The stillness between you isn't awkward. It's earned. The fire crackles again, as if the room agrees. Every hallway, every ceiling was designed to overwhelm. But no one ever built a room just for comfort. Not into sleep, not quite, but into a space where the world can't follow. I think this room is the only one in Versailles that was made for me, not for them. She blinks slowly and then whispers, "Will you tell me something real?" Just a few drops at first, then more, as if the night has decided to join your quiet rhythm. She turns her head to listen, her expression changing slightly, not sad, not startled, just thoughtful. There are no gilded mirrors, no symbols carved into every corner. And now it belongs to us, at least for tonight. When it rained at Versailles, they'd send someone to fetch me, as if I needed to be rescued from the sky. Just soft linens, aged wood, the scent of lavender and steam. She continues. They needed me to be excessive, because if I was too soft, too real, too human, they wouldn't know what to do with me. Thank you, she says. I forget. Sometimes, that honesty can be gentle. And the fire continues to burn low, the rain tapping in harmony, the water holding her like an embrace. She reaches for the edge of the tub again, resting her wrist just beside yours. Her skin glows in the firelight, her body framed by steam and candlelight. In fact, she turns her head toward the sound and closes her eyes again. She holds your hand gently, more as a grounding than a gesture. That's what this is, she adds. Not a story, not a fantasy, just understanding. She's just here, unguarded. She isn't posing. She's not performing. You feel the air shift slightly, not colder, just quieter. You tell her something about your past, a memory, a moment no one else knows. You speak low, careful not to disturb the softness of the air. And she listens not out of curiosity, but out of care. And for once, not be afraid of what dreams might come. Her face doesn't change, but you feel her attention. She hears you. Less rigid, fewer performances. I thought if I could change the rules a little, people might breathe easier. But instead, they sharpened their knives. I once tried to make the court simpler, she says. She's not bitter. She's just honest. I don't know if I was ever truly hated, she says, or if I was just convenient to blame. You want to ask if she regrets it all. The palace, the crown, the silence. I regret hiding. I regret how long I let them define me, but not tonight. She breathes in deeply and exhales through her nose. The bathwater still sways with her movements, slow and soft like a lullaby. She turns her head toward you again. Tell me, are you real? The question isn't meant to be answered. You don't speak. You simply place your hand gently over hers. She smiles again, eyes heavy now. Then I'll believe it. Just for tonight. The candles have burned lower now. You can tell she's slipping somewhere deeper. You hesitate for only a breath, then you do. When you finish, she exhales again, longer this time. She sits up slightly, only enough to lean forward and pull warm water slowly down her shoulder. Do you know, she says, when they built this palace, they wanted to impress the gods. Her hand dips into the water again, and she stirs it slowly. You look around. It doesn't feel like the rest of the palace. It reminded me of Vienna, of when the world still felt small. She smiles faintly, catching your gaze. Outside the window, rain begins to tap gently against the glass. I used to love the sound of rain, she says. She leans back again, letting her head rest against the towel behind her, eyes half closed. You both laugh softly, and the sound feels out of place in the most perfect way. I never wanted to be rescued, she says. I wanted to be understood. Her fingers reach for yours again, and you let them. The rain outside deepens, now steady and rhythmic. A perfect background hum. She doesn't seem to mind it. I could fall asleep like this, she says, voice barely above the sound of the water. You tighten your grip on her hand slightly, a silent promise. She smiles without opening her eyes. I think I'll stay here a while longer, she murmurs. And you will too. You nod. For tonight, this is the whole world. And neither of you needs anything more. The rain has settled into a steady rhythm now. It taps gently on the glass, each drop a soft drumbeat that seems to echo in the quiet spaces of the room. The fire has dimmed but still glows, casting just enough warmth to keep the cold from slipping in. You and Marie haven't moved much. There's no reason to. A place to escape the palace without being seen. She smiles. But I didn't need a tunnel. I just needed one night like this. The world beyond this room has grown distant, and time no longer feels like something to measure. She opens her eyes slowly. They don't look tired. They look content. The kind of quiet that only comes when a burden has been set down, even if only for a little while. There's a rumor, she says, voice smooth and slow, that I once had a secret tunnel under Versailles. Her arm brushes the edge of the tub again, and she reaches out, fingers finding yours without needing to look. Just repeating roles written by others until the curtain fell. Do you ever wonder, she asks, how many queens died never knowing who they really were? I don't remember the speeches or the jewels or the names of half the people in the room, but I will remember this night, this breath, this silence, a glance, a gift, a performance. But it's not. It's presence, attention, not as queen and guest, but as two people who found something rare in a world that never slowed down. You hear her breathing, slow and calm. You can feel the warmth of the room pressing in like a blanket, and for the first time, you let yourself relax completely. A moment like this, when nothing is asked and everything is offered anyway. She doesn't say it with sorrow. She says it with understanding. Not the halls of politics or performance, but the quiet room behind the curtain, where the queen shed her crown and you became the witness to her truest self. The way someone might speak of an old version of themselves they've finally left behind. I used to believe that love was something given in pieces, she continues. Her thumb moves gently over your knuckles. You haven't asked me to be anything but myself. That's rarer than gold. She shifts slightly in the water and exhales deeply. It isn't a sigh of regret. It's a release. The truth is, she says, I don't remember what I wore the day I was crowned. You can feel your own thoughts beginning to slow, your body heavier, your mind softer. The fire hisses softly as it settles deeper into embers. The rain outside is turned into a lullaby. She notices. You're getting sleepy too, aren't you? You nod faintly, and she smiles. Good, she says. Let's sleep together tonight. She closes her eyes again, and this time, she doesn't open them right away. This is the Versailles no one talks about. And you know, without question, that no history book will ever come close to telling this part. But you were here. You saw her. And in the soft flicker of dying firelight, she saw you too. The water has cooled, but not uncomfortably so. Just enough to remind you that time has passed. But still, neither of you moves. Her lips part slightly, and her voice emerges, low and unhurried. That there would always be people, always noise, always hands ready to carry my burdens. But it's the loneliest role in the world. There's a kind of stillness between you now that feels earned, sacred, like breaking it would undo everything the evening has become. People see the crown, the silk, the pearls. You've held my hand while I was just a woman in water, not a symbol or a scandal. She has stopped trying to be misunderstood. She's let that part of herself go. They think that's the reward, but those things are just armor. Beautiful, heavy armor you're not allowed to remove. Marie lies with her eyes closed, her breathing soft, her face unguarded. When I was young, I thought royalty meant never being alone. Her fingers trail through the water again, slow and aimless. You can hear it clearly now, not bitterness, but understanding. But tonight, she adds, you've seen me without any of it, as she hoped you would. And the silence continues like a conversation that only the two of you understand. The fire has settled to quiet embers, but the heat lingers, just enough to wrap the room in its arms. Maybe it just takes one person, one night, one quiet hour to remind you that love can be gentle. You've made this room feel like the safest place in the world. Somewhere with no name, no titles, no audience. Marie doesn't move much anymore. Her breathing is even, her hands relaxed at her sides, just drifting, like a leaf on a river. No destination, no effort, just movement. You wonder if she's already fallen asleep. But then she speaks, eyes still closed. You're still here. That means more than you know. She opens her eyes again, and the look she gives you is different now. It's not distant, or wistful, or sad. It's soft, steady, and full of something she rarely gives away. Trust. She tilts her head slightly, resting it against the linen at the edge of the tub. The eyes that want something. But not yet. Not this hour. Not this minute. The warmth, the silence, the rhythm of the rain outside, it all blends into one soft hum. That you had to prove you could survive loneliness before anyone would stay. But I don't have to be alone now. Not love, not desire, but understanding. Recognition. She sees you, not as a dream, not as an escape, but as something more enduring. You don't speak. You simply meet her gaze. The silence between you doesn't need filling. It's already rich with meaning. The world outside the bath remains silent. And slowly, softly, her breathing deepens, her grip loosens, and her expression smooths into rest. It's a small movement, but one that signals something important. The moment is closing, but gently. I used to think love was something earned through suffering, she says. She closes her eyes again. But maybe that's not true. She shifts slightly in the tub, curling inward a little, and the water rises just slightly along her skin. She exhales slowly, deeply. If I never have another night like this, it will still be enough. There's nothing you could say that would add to the moment, so you don't try. You stay, as you promised. Outside, the rain is softer now, thinning to a mist. She breathes in again. When I close my eyes, I'm not in Versailles anymore. I'm somewhere quieter. A pause. And you're there too. The embers flicker once, then settle into a quiet orange glow. When I was a child, I used to dream of floating, she says. Not flying. Her voice is barely audible now. You lean closer, but not because she's fading. It's because you want to catch every word. I think that's what this has been, she continues. Just floating. Just finally being allowed to exist without expectation. You sit quietly beside her, letting her words become part of the room. Tomorrow the world returns, she whispers. The servants. The noise. She opens her eyes one last time and looks at you. And in that look, there's something unspoken but clear. You'll remember this, won't you? She asks. You nod. Good, she says. Then it won't be lost. She reaches for the cloth nearby and brings it slowly to her shoulder, patting the drops of water that cling to her skin. I'm not ready to step out yet, she says. She rests her head again, this time against the soft linen. Her fingers find yours one last time. Thank you, she says, for staying, for listening, for being the quiet I never had. You sit beside her, still, calm, present, watching over a woman who, for one night, stopped being a queen and became herself. She falls asleep. And you remain. Not in marble, not in legend, but in warm water, with one candle still burning and your hand still beside hers. The night holds you both. And history, for once, stays silent. You don't know how long you stayed awake after she drifted off. The fire had dimmed to little more than glowing wood in faint heat, and the bathwater was now tepid. But you didn't want to move. Not yet. Not when everything felt so still, so quiet, so full. Marie's hand had slipped from yours sometime during the night. It rests now by her side, open, delicate, her fingers just touching the surface of the water. Her hair, once pinned and proper, floats around her shoulders like a halo, a final rebellion against the world she was born into. The room doesn't smell like royalty anymore. It smells like sleep, like skin, like the faint echo of lavender clinging to the towels. Just pale light slipping slowly over the horizon, brushing against the heavy curtains. The rain has stopped. The palace breathes. The scent of a woman who finally allowed herself to rest. Outside the windows, morning begins to stir. Not loud, not fast. You shift slightly, careful not to make a sound, and Marie's eyelids flutter. She doesn't open them all the way, just enough to know you're still there. She's not telling you for approval. She's telling you because the dream still lingers, and naming it aloud helps keep it alive for one more minute. Not like the ones here, trimmed and sculpted to impress. No, it was wild. Vines curling over broken stone, bees humming in the weeds, apples that fell without ceremony. The spell of night is slowly unraveling, but neither of you seems ready to let it go. Do you think it's possible? She asks. To belong to someone without being owned? She exhales. You didn't leave. If I stayed still long enough, they'd carry me away. But I also don't want it to be a story. I want it to be real, even if it only exists in this one morning. She reaches for a towel and wraps it around herself with an ease that surprises you. She doesn't rush. She doesn't hide. She simply moves. She smiles at you, not shy, not bold, just present. My mother raised us with steel on our backs and roses in our hands. You let her memory unfold slowly, like mist rising from the bath. She told me to smile, even when it hurt, and to never ask questions I didn't want answered. I didn't know crowns could be cages. It's hidden behind a tapestry, quiet and narrow, and it leads down a narrow corridor lit only by slivers of daylight breaking through old stone. Her voice is different now, raw, unpolished by court etiquette. It sounds like something you were never meant to hear. The palace creaks around you, not with ghosts, but with memory. Something private, meant only for moments like this. It leads to a part of the palace no one visits anymore. She walks to the center and turns to face you. The air grows cooler, older. She stops in front of a wooden door with a brass handle that has long since dulled. "I dreamt I was walking through Vienna again," she murmurs. "Barefoot down a dirt road, no guards, no shoes, just ... The sound of my own breath. You tilt your head. Before the baths. Before the gowns. Before I learned how to lie with grace. I didn't know places like Versailles even existed. The hedges are still wet with rain. The fountains still off, as if even they are sleeping in. When I was a girl," she says, "I thought Vienna was the world." She stirs the water with one hand, watching the ripples spread and fade. You don't speak. Not a scandal. Not a memory waiting to be rewritten. "There was a garden behind our house," she continues. She smiles, faint and nostalgic. "I used to lie on my back there and watch the clouds move. I remember thinking, and you?" The light outside grows a little brighter, and the shadows on the walls begin to fade. She turns to you now, slowly, with that same soft gaze you remember from the night before. It's not a question meant for an answer. It's something she's been asking herself for years. She rises slightly in the bath, water dripping from her skin, the curve of her shoulder catching the light. "I don't want this to be a secret," she says. You stand now too, slowly, letting the air settle around your skin. The two of you step out onto the cool marble, and for a moment, the silence stretches again. Not uncomfortable, just quiet, reverent. She walks toward the window and parts the curtains slightly. Morning light spills in, soft and gold. This is the part one always hated. The return. The mask. The audience. "The world is waking up," she says. "But I'm not ready to join it yet." You come to stand beside her, and together you look out over the gardens. She leans her head against the window frame. You reach gently for her hand. She takes it without looking. "I want to show you something," she says. She turns, pulls you gently by the hand, and leads you through a small side door you hadn't noticed before. You don't speak. "This passage," she whispers, "was once used by the maids, before the court began using servants like ornaments. The hallway bends, and you descend a flight of stairs so shallow they feel like an afterthought." She pushes it open. The room inside is small, almost plain. A fireplace long since used. A single armchair beside a bookshelf. A window covered in dust. Sometimes I wish I'd stayed here. Never opened the next door. Never accepted the next title. "This," she says, "was my first refuge." She sits in the chair and pats the space beside her on the floor. You join her. "I'd come here when I needed to forget," she says. "Not escape. Just ... pause." She closes her eyes again. The quiet between you returns. Familiar now. Trusting. Outside, the sun continues to rise. The palace groans as servants begin to stir. Footsteps echo faintly somewhere above. But in this room, in this forgotten corner of royalty, she is just Marie again. Not a queen. Just a woman. She lets her head fall back against the chair, her hair spilling over the edges like silk unraveling from a ribbon. You notice how the light touches her face differently in this room. No gold leaf, no painted ceilings to reflect it. Grand gestures, stolen kisses, midnight declarations beneath balconies. But I think this is the kind I always needed. The kind that sits beside you and lets you breathe. Just daylight, soft and unfiltered, showing every freckle, every curve, every real thing about her. "I used to think love had to be loud," she says softly. "My mother would have hated you," she says with a smirk. She wouldn't say it, of course. She'd invite you to dinner, dress you in something expensive, and smile with her mouth while judging you with her eyes. She looks down at you, her hand finding your shoulder, resting there, not asking, not claiming, just settling in. There's a kind of warmth in the stillness now, a warmth that doesn't need flames. The kind of love that doesn't arrive with trumpets, but with silence. The fireplace is cold, but you almost don't notice. She traces the edge of the armrest with her fingers. Not the girl from Austria. Not the Queen of France. Just me. You glance up. She's still smirking. They were placed here to give the illusion of culture. But every so often, I'd sneak down and open one. Not to learn. Just to feel something that didn't belong to the court. Do you ever feel like you've been living someone else's life? She kneels in front of you, opening it to a random page. Like the story you're in was written by another hand. You don't recognize the words, but the emotion is clear. It's about loss. About longing. About love that arrives too late but stays anyway. But she would have hated you, she adds, because you make me forget who I was supposed to become. She leans forward, resting her elbows on her knees, hands clasped between them. I've been performing for so long, I forgot what it feels like to speak and not be watched. She stays there for a long time, pressed close, not moving. A poem no one expected to find in a room that's almost forgotten. Acceptance. You shift, just enough so your knee touches hers. She doesn't move away. I wonder sometimes, she says, if anyone ever really knew me. She turns to you, her eyes searching your face, not for answers, but for reflection. You could stay here forever. She knows that. She feels it too. And for the second time in your life, you feel what it means to be fully present. You nod. Then maybe, she says, we were written into each other's margins. Most of these were never read, she says. There's something about this moment, about her voice, about the dust motes dancing in the light, about the way the world outside this room seems like a painting hung in someone else's gallery. She stands slowly and walks to the bookshelf. Her fingers skim over the worn spines. She pulls one out, a small leather-bound volume with cracked corners, and brings it back to the chair. She doesn't sit. Until the knocking begins. Until someone remembers I'm missing. Listen, she says. Her voice is gentle, steady, not rehearsed. She reads aloud. A poem, simple and raw. When she finishes, she closes the book and places it between you. I think that's what we are, she says. She rests her forehead against yours, her breath soft against your lips. If this is a dream, she whispers, don't wake me yet. You close your eyes, and the air thickens with stillness, like the pause between tides. And then, faintly, the sound of footsteps from the corridor above. She sighs, not with dread, but with recognition. It's starting, she says. The day, the obligations, the performance. She opens her eyes again, and they meet yours with a different kind of clarity. Now, not sorrow, not fear, but not just yet. She sits beside you on the floor, shoulder to shoulder, back to the fireplace. Stay with me a little longer, she says. And so you do. You sit in silence with the Queen of France in a forgotten room below the palace, with only dust and words and memory between you. The knocking never comes. Or maybe it does, and neither of you hears it. Time folds inward in this little room, tucked beneath the weight of marble and expectation. You sit with your back against the cold fireplace, and Marie sits beside you, one leg curled under the other, her shoulder resting lightly against yours. She has gone quiet again, but not because she's retreating. She's listening to something only she can hear. Her voice is so soft you have to lean in to catch it. You turn your head slightly to look at her, and for once, she doesn't seem to be thinking. She's just there, breathing, existing without apology. A woman who has paused the world. I didn't know about alliances or rumors or how many eyes watched my every move. I thought people were just people, and I liked them. You know what I miss most? She finally says. It's hard to like people once you understand what they're capable of. I miss not knowing things. She glances at you, smiling faintly at your confusion. When I was little, I didn't understand politics or power. She plucks a piece of lint from the hem of her gown, then shrugs. But you, she starts, and then she stops herself. She closes her eyes. You wait. Something outside of all this. Like maybe you were never meant to be in this world, either. Maybe we're both misfits who got dressed up in the wrong story. You don't feel like one of them, she says. You feel like... She presses her lips together. With me. Listening. Like something alive. Something unguarded. You let the quiet hang for a while because it deserves to. She shifts, stretching her legs out in front of her, her head leaning now against your shoulder instead of just beside it. You were just there. You're warm, she murmurs. But you looked at the shadows. You didn't flinch. You smile. You don't say anything. You don't need to. She stares ahead, into the dim fireplace, as if reading something written in the soot. After a long pause, she says, "Do you know why I chose you?" Your heart skips. Just once. Now I'm not sure it matters. She doesn't look at you when she speaks this time, because you didn't want anything from me. Another pause. Not the crown, not the story, not even the affection. The room holding its breath as if it too knows how rare this is. She exhales slowly, the way someone might blow out a candle in a dark room. Gently, without rush, without fear. I've spent so much of my life giving away pieces of myself to people who only wanted the shine, never the shape. You follow. She closes her eyes again, resting her hand over her chest. Do you ever wonder what part of you will be remembered? She asks, if you'll be remembered at all? You think for a moment, and she continues. I used to worry that they'd write my ending wrong, that the history books would choose scandal over truth. But now, the warmth between your palms, the weight of her leaning into you. She tilts her head to look up at you, because the real story is right here. She takes your hand again, placing it gently over her heart. This is the page that will never be published, but it's the one I'll carry with me until the very end. For a moment, the silence says more than either of you ever could. And then she says something so quiet you almost miss it. Will you walk with me? Just for a while. You nod. She rises slowly, her gown brushing the stone floor, her bare feet making no sound as she crosses to the door. And as the door creaks open, and the corridor swells with the soft light of morning, you understand something. You are no longer just a guest in her story. You're a companion in her escape. The passage curves, lit by faint beams of sunlight sneaking through narrow windows high above. The stone beneath your feet is cool and uneven, warmed by time and footsteps long forgotten. The space smells like old plaster and damp earth, like it hasn't been disturbed in years. When the candles burned down and the music had long died out, the kind that might have once led to a servant's quarters or a quiet storeroom, she looks at you with a flicker of mischief. Everyone else would stumble to their chambers, full of wine and stories, but I would sneak away to this silence. She seems to know the way by memory, turning through corners without hesitation, occasionally brushing her hand along the wall as if greeting an old friend. She walks slowly, barefoot, her gown gathered slightly in one hand to keep it from dragging. There is no urgency, no fear of being seen, only the hush of something sacred being shared. You follow behind her, your footsteps nearly in sync. I used to come here after banquets, she says. She stops beside a wooden door, small and arched. This next room, she whispers, has never seen a crown. She opens it gently, and the hinges groan like they're waking from a long sleep. Like crushed mint and morning rain and the green breath of growing things. Come closer. Inside is something you didn't expect. This. Feel that? She asks. They grew around each other, not because they were told to, just because they did. Overgrown with ivy and wildflowers. The air changes the moment you step inside. But here, I just am. She closes her eyes and lifts her face to the sky. Warmer, fuller. The sun pours in from above, cascading through an open ceiling that looks almost carved by nature itself. Like curious gods, wondering how long we could pretend to be what we're not. Her hair fans out beneath her like ink spilled on parchment. The birds are quiet here, as if they too are respecting the moment. Not luxury, not secrets, but a garden. The sounds of Versailles, the footsteps, the chatter, the orders, don't reach here. They can't. Hidden, walled in. The kind you don't want to wake up from, even when the world is calling your name. Marie steps barefoot into the grass, her gown brushing along wild lavender and dew-kissed moss. This was my first rebellion, she says. Not jewels, not gossip, not lovers. No one knows about this place. Not even the king. She kneels and runs her fingers through the soil like someone returning to a childhood home, where time slows and two people can choose each other with nothing but silence. You take a slow step forward. The garden smells like life, where a queen can be a girl again. She looks back at you, her smile softer now. You do. She takes your hand and places it over a rough patch of bark where two vines have tangled together. She lets the moment sit in the air for a while before she speaks again. I've lived so long being told where to stand, how to speak, who to smile at, what to feel. She lies down in the grass, staring up at the sky through the open ceiling of the garden. You lie beside her, shoulder to shoulder. I used to imagine, she says, that the stars were watching us. Not judging, just watching. You watch the clouds drift above you, slow and content. If this is a dream, she whispers, then let it be the long kind. She turns her head to face you, her eyes bright despite the soft morning. And if you must wake me, she says, do it gently. You don't speak. You just stay with her. In the only place at Versailles where truth grows wild and love isn't a scandal. The sun has risen higher now, but neither of you has moved. Marie lies beside you with one arm tucked beneath her head, her other hand resting gently on her stomach, fingers curling absent-mindedly around a blade of grass. She hums something soft under her breath, a melody with no name, the kind a child might invent on a walk alone. I used to believe silence was punishment, she says, that if a room went quiet, something had gone wrong. She pauses. The wind moves through the ivy above, shifting light across her face. But this isn't that kind of silence. This feels like being understood. Her voice drifts into the air, unhurried. There's no lesson she's trying to teach, no performance to maintain. She simply speaks because she wants you to hear her. When I first came to France, everything smelled different, she says. The perfume, the food, even the rain. I hated it at first. I thought I would never belong here. You just let your hand drift toward hers, and she doesn't pull away. And then, one day, I realized I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't brought here to belong. I was brought here to fit. This time, her gaze lingers. She plucks a flower from the grass and rolls the stem between her fingers. I've spent so much of my life trying to shrink myself. Softer voice, fewer questions, smile more, apologize less. And for what? The vines are thicker here, the leaves brushing against your shoulders as you pass. It feels like stepping deeper into her memory. She tosses the flower gently to the side. Not angry, not dramatic, just quietly sad. Do you ever wonder how much of you was lost just trying to be accepted? I just sit here and listen to the wind. And it would remind me that even when nothing made sense, something was still moving. You don't answer aloud. The fabric ripples in the light breeze, catching bits of gold from the sun above. She stands and offers you her hand, pulling you to your feet with a smile that doesn't belong to royalty. It belongs to someone free. The birds, the breeze, the soft shift of the trees, they fill the silence like a lullaby. We are not meant to be trimmed like hedges, she says, her eyes still on the sky. We're meant to grow wild. She turns her head and looks at you again. I never thought I'd say this, but I feel more alive now than I ever did in the grandest ballroom. The moment settles between you like a soft weight, comforting, real. She sits up slowly, brushing grass from her gown. Come, she says. There's one more place I want you to see. You follow her through a narrow trail hidden between tall hedges. The path opens to a small stone bench beside a dry fountain. The carvings are faded, the marble cracked with time. She sits and traces the rim with her fingertips. "This is where I used to come when I was sad," she says. She pats the bench beside her. "You sit. Sometimes I wouldn't even cry," she says. She leans her head on your shoulder, her voice barely more than a breath. "I don't want to go back yet." You place your hand gently over hers. You don't have to. The fountain doesn't bubble, but it doesn't need to. The quiet hum of nature is enough. "I think this is the first time I've felt like I'm not pretending," she whispers. "Not hiding, not performing, just being." She lifts her head and looks at you with a tenderness that is almost too much to hold. "I wish the world could see me like this. But maybe it's better that only you do." And in that moment, you know something simple but certain. This is not a memory she'll revisit alone. You'll carry it with her. Always. The garden has changed. Not in any obvious way, but you feel it. The warmth is deeper now. The sunlight more golden, as if it too has decided to linger here just a little longer. Marie stretches her legs out before her and tilts her face toward the sky. "When I was 15, I thought happiness was applause. A room full of people rising to their feet. I thought it was being wanted. Do you know what I feel right now? I don't think I've ever had this much time without interruption," she says. "No lace to wear, no names to remember, no lies to tell." She glances sideways at you with a soft smile. It's strange how quiet happiness can be. Her fingers trace patterns on her knee as she speaks, not rushed, not rehearsed. She shakes her head slowly, but applause fades. And being wanted is not the same as being seen. They're the only truths we protect instead of display. She leans back onto the stone bench again, her shoulder brushing yours. "But I don't want to walk back the same way." You wait. Like maybe, for once, I don't have to run from myself. "Peace," she whispers. The breeze picks up slightly, rustling the leaves above, scattering a few petals across the bench. Marie watches one of them land on your lap and smiles. You sit in silence again. Not because there's nothing to say, but because every second of this silence feels like a gift. Just here. "This garden is going to miss us," she says. "It will go back to being forgotten. But now it has a secret. Every time I came here, I left a little piece of myself behind. It winds toward the edge of the walled garden, past a crumbled gate overrun with ivy and thyme." She reaches out and lifts the petal from your leg, letting it flutter to the ground. "Sometimes I think secrets are the most honest things we have." She stands slowly, brushing her hands along the folds of her gown. "We should go," she says. The one who finally felt real. The one who didn't speak like a queen. The leaves stopped moving. Even the birds quiet, as if to honor what just passed between you. A patch of ground half hidden beneath vines and shaded by thick trees. In the center, a stone sculpture half buried in moss. A sleeping woman carved in repose, her arms folded across her chest. You follow her through another narrow path, one you hadn't noticed before. She pauses at the threshold. "There's a spot I've never shown anyone, not even the guards." You step through the opening and find yourself in a smaller space wilder, less touched. It looks like it wasn't designed but discovered. Marie kneels before it. "I used to pretend she was me," she says quietly, resting, dreaming, unbothered. "I think this is where I'd like to be remembered. Not in portraits, not in books." She runs her fingers over the stone's face, brushing away a fallen leaf. I envied her. Still do. She turns to you. You kneel beside her. She takes your hand and places it gently over the sculpture's heart. "It's not beating," she says, "but it held my dreams for years." She looks at you, serious now. "Promise me something." You nod. "If you ever remember me," she says, "remember this version. The one who wandered barefoot through wildflowers." You take her hand in both of yours. "I promise." And for a moment, the wind stills. Then she rises, brushing dirt from her knees. Let's go before they come looking. You follow her through the broken gate, the vines parting one last time as you step back into the morning. And the garden, her secret garden, closes gently behind you, still wild, still waiting, still hers. The path narrows again as you leave the hidden garden, but Marie walks slower now. Not out of hesitation, but as if she's pulling each last moment closer, refusing to let it go easily. The stone walls of Versailles begin to reappear between the trees, their clean lines and ornate windows sharp in contrast to the wild softness you just left behind. Funny, she says, how quickly the illusion returns. She looks over her shoulder at you. Do I look different now that we're back on their path? They'll look at me and see a queen again. You'll look at me and see the woman who once whispered secrets to a statue. You shake your head, and you mean it. But she smiles anyway, a knowing kind of smile. She brushes a leaf from her shoulder, then glances up toward the upper palace floors. Somewhere behind those windows, they're already wondering where I've gone. The tea is cooling. The gossip is warming. The wheel turns. She pauses at the bottom step, her hand resting lightly on the worn rail. When my feet were sore and my smile was tired, I'd take off my shoes and walk these stairs, just to feel something real. For a long moment, she doesn't open it. She just looks at you. The corridor winds upward now, leading toward a narrow stairwell. The room inside is grand, gold, elegant, but cold. Compared to where you just were, it feels hollow. You follow in silence, the only sound the hush of footsteps on old stone. The same gardens you just left are visible in the distance. But from up here, they look tiny, like a painting hung too high to touch. In her, the walls are the same. The chandeliers still sparkle. But now you know the truth. This is only a stage. I used to sneak down here after dances, she says. She starts to climb, barefoot once more, the fabric of her dress dragging lightly behind her. Then her rings, then her necklace. Each piece removed like shedding a version of herself she no longer needs to wear in your presence. Marie pulls it aside and opens the door just a crack, peeking through. At the top of the stairs is another door, this one hidden behind a faded curtain embroidered with lily. The morning staff hasn't seen you yet. There's still a little magic left. No one's in the corridor, she says with quiet amusement. How scandalous. She slips through and you follow, stepping back into the grandeur of Versailles. But something has changed. Not in the palace, but in you. You walk together down the hall, careful not to speak too loudly. She leads you to her chamber door and rests her hand on the knob. Then let's make the silence last a little longer. This is where the day ends, she says. Even if it's only just begun. She opens the door slowly. It makes everything seem smaller than it is. She steps in and turns back to face you. Will you stay for a little longer? You nod. She closes the door behind you, then walks to the window. I always hated this view, she says. She turns to you, her expression softer again. I'm glad you came with me. She removes her earrings and places them on the vanity with a delicate clink. Finally, she sits on the edge of the bed, barefoot, her hair loose from its braid. This is what's left when the costume comes off. She tilts her head and smiles. Still want to stay? You cross the room and sit beside her. No words. Just closeness. She exhales, deep and slow. And in that quiet, everything becomes clear again. Not because of what's said, but because of what is felt. She leans back on her hands, legs stretched out before her, toes flexing into the plush rug like she's testing whether it's real. Her hair tumbles over her shoulder in loose waves, darker in the room's soft light. You sit beside her, and for a long moment, neither of you speaks, not because there's nothing to say, but because the silence has turned into a language all its own. Then, without turning, she says, Do you know what I dreamed of when I first came here You glance at her waiting, a doorway one that only I could see it didn't lead to anywhere grand, just somewhere quiet somewhere. I could laugh without consequence, cry without explanation. Somewhere I could be absurd, foolish, free. She looks over at you. I never found that door. You hold her gaze until last night, she adds quietly. The room shifts with her words. It softens, or maybe it's your breathing that changes slower, deeper, matching hers. There's a version of me, she says, the one they write about in pamphlets and whisper about at court. They call her extravagant, frivolous, dangerous. But no one ever wonders why she became that way. She moves to the edge of the bed and folds her arms on her knees. They gave me a crown before I had a voice, a husband before I had a choice, a throne before I knew what it meant to kneel, and when I finally asked to be seen, they said I was asking too much. You say nothing, but your hand reaches for hers. She lets it happen, her fingers curling around yours, as if that single touch answers everything she just said. And laugh at my own jokes, but all they saw was a symbol, a porcelain figure behind glass. I wanted to dance barefoot in the rain, she says. I wanted to eat with my hands, said to anyone. She turns to you, her eyes softer now, but you saw past it. She lifts your hand to her cheek and closes her eyes for a moment, as if anchoring herself there. And let them believe the myth. I'm going to tell you something, if never. You nod, your voice still quiet. She opens her eyes. I was never in love with the idea of a kingdom. I was in love with the idea of being loved, and when that never came, I buried myself in silk and mirrors. Udzil. Soft breeze from the window moves through the room. The curtains stir like they're listening too. You've given me something better than history. She whispers, you've given me a moment that doesn't need to be remembered to be real. She stands, stepping slowly toward the window outside. The day is fully awake. Now courtiers pass below like insects dressed in powder and jewels. The palace is performing again. She turns back to you and leans against the window frame. They'll come soon with questions, with reminders, with expectations. You rise and meet her there, both of you framed by the morning sun. But it'll let them wait, she says. And she does. She takes your hand, not as a queen, not even as a lover, as a woman reclaiming her breath. And for the second time that day, Versailles disappears. She doesn't speak for a while. Instead, she watches the world move beneath her. The courtyards fill, servants rushing with fresh linens, a nobleman checking his pocket watch, powdered wigs bobbing like ships in the wind. 100 lives below her window, each spinning in its own orbit, and none of them know what just happened in the quiet spaces of Versailles. They think I belong to them. She says finally, voice low. The people, the crown, history. She walks toward the vanity and sits, looking at her reflection. It's the first time she's faced it all morning. Her eyes flicker across the glass, taking in what remains of the wildness, the loose strands of hair, the grass stains along the hem of her gown, the faint crease in her cheek where she had leaned against you. She looks over her shoulder at you, her expression unreadable but soft. But for this moment, I belong only to myself. You say nothing. You don't have to. Look at her, she murmurs. She looks like someone who just woke from a real dream. She doesn't reach for a comb. She doesn't fix a thing. She just stares, almost daring herself to stay undone. I wonder, she says, if anyone has ever loved me without an audience. She turns slowly in her chair and looks at you, her lips parting as if she's about to ask a question, but I isn't sure if she has the right. But you're already there, your hand gently brushing her hair behind her ear. I thought not, she whispers. She reaches for you and draws you down gently to sit across from her on the floor. No throne, no ceremony, no titles. Just two people tangled in the pause before the curtain rises again. I don't know how much longer I can hold on to this, she admits. Not harshly, not with alarm, but with ceremony. The kind that signals the start of another royal day. This stillness. This version of me. Her fingers lace into yours, and for a heartbeat, it feels like you're not in a palace. Not in France. Not in history at all. Promise me something, she says. You nod again. You'll remember the version no one saw, the kind that holds every word left unsaid. When they write about me, when the pamphlets spin their lies and the history books choose the juicier ending, she places your joined hands over her chest. You'll remember the breath between the sentences. You lean your forehead to hers, and she closes her eyes. Outside the window, the bells of Versailles begin to chime. She sighs. That's the call. Still, she doesn't move. You stay like that for another moment, quiet, together, untouched by the noise of duty. And then only then does she pull away. Not completely, just enough. Just enough to remind herself that she's still a queen. But before the mask slips back into place, she gives you one final glance. The kind of glance that no one else will ever receive. The kind that won't be recorded in any court journal or memoir. But it will live in you. Because you were there. She moves slowly now. Each gesture precise, not out of performance, but as if she's relearning how to fit back into the shape of her world. She pulls the curtain aside slightly, watching as a servant approaches the hallway with a silver tray. Not all the way, just enough to muffle the sound of Versailles stirring below. Her fingers brush the sill one last time. Let them think I was up late reading or praying. A knock will come soon. That's the rule. Marie steps back and closes the window. Let them think I slept in, she says softly. She turns to you. But we'll know the truth. But every ribbon they tie will feel looser than your hands. She walks toward the door where the knock is just beginning to form in the wood. 3 gentle raps. She doesn't answer. She looks at you instead, drinking in one final, unbroken moment. Powder me. Lace me into something tighter than my own breath. They'll want to dress me now, she says. She presses her palm to your chest, just once. But her eyes, even now, refuse to harden. She doesn't let go of softness. You are more freedom than I ever thought I'd taste. Another knock, more insistent now. On the version of her that will live in you forever. She steps back, just enough for her to draw a breath and find her posture again. She places one kiss, just one on your shoulder. It's not performative. It's not seductive. It's a seal, not on your skin. Then she walks to the vanity and picks up the smallest ring, just a band of gold, simple, forgotten in the pile of jewels, and slides it onto your palm. For memory, she says, not ownership, just memory. She walks to the door, her hand resting on the handle. She doesn't open it yet. She turns her head, her voice barely above breath. I hope when you sleep tonight, you dream of gardens. And then she opens the door. There's a woman still barefoot beneath her gown. A woman who danced through a secret garden, who touched a statue like it held her past, who whispered the truth into your hand. Light pours in. Voices rise. The play begins again. But this time, you know something they don't. Behind the powdered face, the rehearsed smile, the deliberate nods, and you didn't just witness it. You lived it. And no matter what history writes, you'll remember the version they never saw. The real one, the hidden one, the one that chose you. You didn't leave the palace that morning. Not really. Your body might have stepped into the corridor, moved through the great golden galleries, nodded politely at staff who didn't recognize you without her by your side. But your mind stayed behind, back in the warmth of her chamber, back in the hush of ivy and stone, back in her gaze that told a truth no crown could ever claim. Versailles feels different now, not smaller, not grander, just hollow, beautiful and hollow, like a painted theater set after the actors have gone home. You find a place to sit in an alcove tucked behind one of the south wings. It's quiet here, a space not used for ceremonies or show, just for passing moments. Your fingers trace the grooves in the marble bench, and for the first time since sunrise, you let yourself exhale. The warmth of her kiss still lingers on your shoulder, not as a mark, not even as memory, as presence. The garden is there, impossibly far now, like something imagined rather than lived. You wonder if she's returned to it, if maybe, in some secret moment later, she'll go back to lay among the flowers alone. Or maybe she'll wait for you again, because somehow she's still with you. You look out through the tall window beside you. The moon is full above the palace roofline, casting pale light across the stone paths and hedges. Everything feels softer under it, quieter. That thought stays with you longer than it should. The hallway murmurs with life now, a distant laugh, the ring of a goblet, footsteps and rhythm. You close your eyes, and time folds. When you open them again, you're no longer on the marble bench. You're outside. You don't remember walking here, but you must have. The evening air wraps around your shoulders like silk. And she's there, Marie. Not in a gown, not even in disguise. Just a cloak pulled loosely around her, her bare feet brushing the gravel path as she walks. You don't ask where you're going. She doesn't look surprised to see you. She smiles like she expected it. When I was young, they told me I could go anywhere. But there were always guards, rules, dresses stitched too tight to run in. I couldn't sleep, she says. Grounding. Proof that this isn't just a dream. Neither could you. She nods toward the old gate that leads to the far end of the grounds, the part no guests are ever shown. Come on, she whispers. Let's go somewhere without walls. You walk beside her, and even in silence, the conversation deepens. But I think I'd like to find out. The grass is damp under your feet. The stars shimmer like forgotten secrets. She doesn't rush. Eventually, she stops near a small stream at the very edge of the estate, so far from the palace that even the sound of its breathing can't reach you. She kneels and dips her fingers into the water. I used to think this was the edge of the world, she says. She cups her hands and lets the water trickle through her fingers. No one ever told me freedom could be quiet. You sit beside her, and she leans into you, not dramatically, not like a lover seeking heat, but like a woman seeking weight. I don't know who I am without the palace, she says. You look at her and say nothing, because maybe she doesn't even answer. Maybe she just needs you to stay right here, where there are no portraits, no expectations, no history being written. Just two people at the edge of everything. She trails her fingers along the water's surface again, watching the ripples expand like thoughts she doesn't quite speak aloud. You're close enough to feel the rhythm of her breathing, slow and steady as if the night air is helping her relearn what it means to simply exist. Do you hear that? She whispers. You tilt your head, listening. The wind through leaves, the soft murmur of water over stones, and something else almost too quiet to name. Nothing, she says, answering herself. That's what freedom sounds like. She smiles at her own thought, a smile that barely lifts one corner of her mouth, but feels like a rebellion in itself. She looks over at you. I never got a walk like this, without a plan, without an escort. She glances down at her bare feet in the grass, wiggling her toes. They used to tell me a queen should never let the ground touch her skin. But tonight it feels like the earth is welcoming me back. You lie beside her, the grass cool and damp against your spine. The stars above are scattered like memories, waiting to be rewritten. She joins you slowly, one arm folded under her head, the other resting gently between you. Do you ever wonder what your life could have been? She asks. If no one had told you who to be? You do, but you're not sure the answer matters anymore. Because this life, this moment is enough. She exhales deeply. I used to write letters I never sent. Pages of things I wished I could say to someone. But there was no one to send them to. Her voice drops to almost nothing. Maybe I was waiting for you. She turns her head, her hair brushing your shoulder. You won't stay, will you? She asks. There's no anger in the question, just sadness, deep and quiet. You take her hand, her fingers tighten. You don't have to lie, she says. I know the world pulls at people like us. But promise me something. You nod. When you go, take this version of me with you. Not the queen. Not the scandal. Just the girl who dipped her toes in a forgotten stream under a moon that didn't care what her last name was. You close your fingers around hers. I'll remember the way your eyes looked in moonlight, she adds. Not like glass, not like paintings, but real, tired and open and a little bit lost. She lays her head against your arm. I think I like being lost with you. The water keeps flowing beside you. The wind hums through the trees, and for one more hour, the world forgets your names. She hasn't moved in minutes. Her breath has deepened, not quite sleep, but something close. You stay perfectly still, letting the moment stretch, holding it like something too fragile to name. After a while, she speaks barely a whisper against your shoulder. I used to think love was loud, she says. Fireworks, grand gestures, stolen kisses in crowded halls. Her voice softens even more. But now I think love is this, not needing to speak, just breathing beside someone and feeling known. She lifts her head and sits up slowly, brushing the back of her hand across her eyes. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if we met as nobodies. You, a merchant. Me, the girl who worked at the bakery. You'd come in for bread, not even knowing my name. She smiles down at you. And I'd remember your eyes before I remembered your voice. She stands barefoot, stretching her arms toward the sky. The moonlight gathers around her, pale silver catching on her skin like silk. I'd still be drawn to you, she says, even if you didn't know I once wore a crown. She steps carefully into the shallow edge of the stream, her feet sinking gently into the cold silt. The water catches her reflection and ripples Marie, not as queen, not as rebel, just as woman. She looks over her shoulder and calls softly, "Come in." You hesitate, only for a second. The water's cold, but clean, running. You follow her, stepping slowly beside her, the two of you ankle deep now, breath clouding lightly in the night air. This is the closest I've felt to real since I was a child, she says. No courtiers, no rituals, no weight of history pressing down on me. She closes her eyes and tilts her head back. Her hair falls like ink across her back, damp at the edges. She reaches for your hand. I know this can't last, she says. But maybe if we remember it hard enough, it won't have to end. Your fingers interlace, water flowing past you both like time refusing to wait. Let's stay until the stars disappear, she says. Let's make the moon jealous. You say nothing. Just tighten your grip slightly. And under that wide, open sky, the girl once born into 1,000 expectations leans into you. Not like someone falling, but like someone learning how to stand with you. She stays in the water, her feet brushing across the smooth pebbles, occasionally sending ripples outward like her thoughts. You stand beside her, watching how the silver light catches in her eyes, how every movement she makes now seems unburdened. No stage, no story, just instinct. She dips her fingers into the stream again and lifts them slowly. My mother would hate this, she says, half laughing. She raised me to hold a teacup just so. To never run, never sweat, never dip my hands in anything I could not pronounce. Her voice lowers. She never said what to do when the teacup shattered. She steps out of the stream, water trailing down her ankles. She finds a soft patch of moss and lowers herself onto it, patting the ground beside her. You sit, dripping slightly, and she rests her head on your shoulder with the ease of someone who has forgotten how to perform. They will be searching by sunrise, she says. Not just for me, but for everything I leave behind. She does not sound afraid, just honest. They always find a way to rewrite women like me, she continues. They call us excessive, emotional, unstable. They never say we were tired, or lonely, or trying. You listen without interruption. They will not tell them how many times I almost spoke up and did not. How many times I begged silently in the middle of a crowded room. How many times I looked regal and felt like I was disappearing. She presses her palm to the center of her chest, just below her collarbone. This is the only part of me that has never worn jewelry. She turns to face you, pulling your hand gently to rest over that spot. But tonight, it feels full. The air around you shifts, like even the wind has gone quiet to make room for this moment. She exhales, and it feels like she's letting go of something heavy. "I'm not asking you to stay," she says, "but I am asking you not to forget." And just like that, the distance between myth and woman disappears. She is entirely real now. Not the queen, not the symbol. Just Marie, and you, sitting under stars that are starting to fade. She stays close to you, her breath steady, her presence warm, despite the chill beginning to lift off the grass. Somewhere beyond the trees, a bird stirs, its call soft and cautious, like it too is not ready to wake the day. Marie runs her fingers through the wet ends of her hair, twisting them slowly as she speaks without looking at you. "Do you think we find people by chance or because we need them?" You do not answer. From the rules, from the isolation, from the mask. Not yet. She continues, more to herself than to you. "I used to think I needed to be rescued, when I was not wearing anything that made me important. But now I wonder if I just needed to be witnessed." She finally looks at you. "You saw me. You looked at me like I was already enough." There's a pause, long and soft. "I did not think anyone ever would." She draws her knees up and wraps her arms around them, resting her chin atop. "I wish I could take this version of me back with me. Into the palace, into the mirrors, into the pages they will write when I am gone." She sighs, not dramatically, just truthfully. "I know how the story goes." She reaches out and takes your hand, not tightly, just to feel the shape of it in hers. "I know I will have to disappear again." You turn toward her, and she is watching the sky now, the blue creeping into the edges of black. The stars are leaving. So is the night. And this moment, fragile as spun glass, begins to stretch thinner. "You will remember this, will you not?" She asks. Before you can speak, she answers herself. "Of course you will. That is why you are here." She lays her head in your lap, like she has done it 100 times before. And maybe she has in all the versions of time that exist only in dreams. "I am so tired," she murmurs. But it is not the tired of the body. The breeze picks up once more, carrying the faint scent of lilac from somewhere far behind you. It is something deeper, something that does not sleep or heal with rest. You nod, and though she cannot see it, she smiles. You stroke her hair back gently, watching her eyes flutter but not close. "If I fall asleep now," she whispers, "will you stay until I wake?" "I thought you might." She does not speak again. She just lets herself rest. Because for once in her life, she is not being watched by a crowd. She is being held by the moment. "And you?" She sleeps for a while, her breath deep and slow, her fingers still wrapped lightly around yours. The first strands of sunlight filter through the branches, golden and tentative. They fall across her cheek like a kiss she does not feel yet. You stay still, memorizing every detail. The rise and fall of her chest, the quiet curve of her smile in sleep, the way her hair curls slightly at the temple. The pages of history can wait. She is not a queen here. You are not a guest. In this moment, nothing needs to happen. The palace can wait. You are simply two souls suspended between night and morning. Eventually, she stirs. Not abruptly like the way fire fades rather than dies. Her eyes open slowly, blinking against the light. When she sees you still there, her lips part into the smallest smile. She sits up, stretching her arms behind her, wincing slightly from the chill in her back. Everything else stops, but that doesn't. You stayed. You nod. The grass has left tiny imprints on her skin. She brushes at them absently, then turns to look at the stream beside you. "It's still running," she says, watching the water ripple. She dips her hand into it one more time, then presses the cool fingers to her cheek. You can see the shift beginning in her posture, the return of weight, the awareness of duty seeping back in like smoke. They'll expect me to smile today, she says. They'll expect me to dance, to eat cake, to pretend. She does not sound angry. She sounds resigned. But they'll have no idea, she says, glancing sideways at you, that I spent the night as something else. Part of me wants to run, just walk through the gates and never come back. She pulls her knees in, wrapping her arms around them again. She pauses. But queens don't run, do they? You say nothing, not because you agree, but because you understand. She stands slowly and offers you her hand. You take it, and she pulls you to your feet with a gentle tug. Walk me back. It is not a question, really. It is a hope. The grass crunches under your feet as you step into the path that will lead back toward Versailles. The rooftops of Versailles catch the first full light of day. You see the faint glimmer of windows. The palace is still far enough that it feels like it might vanish if you do not look too closely. As you walk, she moves closer, not out of need, out of memory, out of the knowledge that, once the gates close behind her, this version of her will not be allowed to speak. But right now, she still can. And she chooses silence. Not because there is nothing left to say, but because you have already heard everything that mattered. Her cloak brushes the tops of the grasses. In the golden hush of early morning, she looks almost mythical, less like a queen and more like a story told in secret. Someone too real to be real. Somewhere in there, the machines of royalty are spinning up again. There is gratitude in her eyes, but also grief. Servants, guards, gossip, court. She stops for a moment at the edge of a low hill. From here, the palace looks almost like a painting. A beautiful one, yes, but flat, distant, contained inside a frame she has never been allowed to step beyond. I always thought I would feel safe here, she says. But it's not safety if it comes with a script. She turns to you. Last night, I forgot my lines. And you didn't correct me. The kind of knowing that lives in the last page of a novel, the last few bars of a melody. Do you ever think about how many versions of yourself never got to live? She asks. I wish I had more time, she says. She gives a soft laugh. But she straightens a little, her chin lifting, not in pride, but in resolve. The ones that were too quiet, too strange, too free. She takes her hand again and begins walking once more, slower than before. The sky above you is wide and unbothered, like it knows this moment is not meant for history books. As you approach the outer garden walls, the air begins to thicken, not with fear but with knowing. They belong to the quiet between two people who met once at the edge of what could have been. When you reach the rear entrance, she pauses again, staring at the great carved doors just beyond the path. I used to dream that one day, the palace gates would open for me and I would walk out to applause. Now I just dream of walking out and not being noticed at all. You step closer, close enough that she leans against you without words. And you know she does not just mean here, with you. She means as herself. She means before the fiction swallowed her name. She is preparing to go back into the role. You can almost feel it happening. Then, without looking, she reaches into the folds of her cloak and takes something small from the pocket. It is a pressed flower. Simple, delicate, slightly crushed from being carried. She places it in your hand. You don't need to take anything else, she says. You hold it gently. And don't tell anyone, she adds, not even yourself. Because some memories do not belong to the world. She stares at the back doors of the palace like they're alive. Like they know everything, the secrets, the regrets, the girl she was before the crown, the woman she became in spite of it. She squeezes your hand once, quickly, like a breath, and then lets go. I won't look back, she says. If I do, I might not go. She steps forward alone now, shoulders straight. cloak whispering across the path like it's reluctant to leave your side. You don't follow, not because you don't want to, but because you know that to follow would undo everything the night gave you both. She reaches the doors. A servant appears from nowhere, unlocking them with silent precision. He doesn't meet her eyes, maybe he's been told not to. Marie hesitates, not long, just long enough for you to see her hand twitch like she almost turned around. But she doesn't. She steps inside, and the doors close. The world is quiet again. You stand there, the pressed flower still in your hand. Its edges have curled slightly, soft and fragile. You place it carefully inside your coat, not to keep it hidden, but to keep it close. There is no fanfare, no music, no curtain fall, just silence. And then a bird sings, one clear high note. Not for her, not for you, just for the morning. You walk away from the door, back through the gardens that now feel impossibly large without her beside you. The ground carries your footsteps, but your body still remembers what it felt like to be held without ceremony, to be chosen without reason, to be known without history. The palace disappears behind you slowly. You don't turn to look, not because you're strong, but because you know if you do, it won't just be a building you see. It'll be her, and that version of her isn't yours to watch anymore. The pressed flower presses gently against your chest. You walk until the air grows thinner, until the sound of birds replaces the silence she left behind. The sky is full daylight now, but everything feels less real under it, brighter, but somehow less vivid. You reach a low stone wall near the edge of the estate, the place where the formal gardens end and the forest begins. You sit, not because you're tired, but because the world is heavy in a way that only comes after you've held something rare and then had to let it go. You close your eyes and let yourself remember, not her as the queen, not the palace or the pearls. The world goes on, but the sound of her laughing when she stepped into cold water, the way her fingers lingered, when she traced the outline of your hand, the way her breath warmed the night air, when she whispered that she felt seen the moment she fell asleep, trusting you would still be there. You sit there a long time. No one comes looking for you. You have something they don't. Somewhere, a meal is being prepared for a king who will never know what she gave you. Somewhere, a painting is being commissioned that will never capture her softness. Somewhere, a lie is being told that will become history, but not your history. You have the version of her that no one will ever believe existed. And maybe that is the most honest kind of love, the kind that doesn't need a witness, because it already lived fully, quietly, completely, in the night between the chapters. You didn't plan to return, but sometimes your feet remember what your mind tries to forget. You come back weeks later, maybe months. You don't keep track anymore, not in numbers, only in feelings, in the way the air tastes different, in the way you still expect her laugh to echo around the corners of a quiet garden. Versailles hasn't changed much, not on the surface. The fountains still perform their practiced arcs. The roses still bloom too perfectly to seem real. You don't ask to enter. You don't need to. And the palace guards still stand stiff, like statues, whose purpose is more for show than safety. But something underneath has shifted. And it knows you. You remember the hidden paths, the side gates, the rhythm of steps that let you blend into the edges of this world, like a ghost returning to haunt a memory. You don't go looking for her, not directly. You just follow the pull. You end up in the old orchard behind the east wing, where once she told you no one ever bothered to look. The trees are crooked here, the fruit smaller but sweeter, the grass unruly like it hasn't been trimmed in defiance. You don't speak. You wait. She's there, not waiting, just being. She wears something simpler, now linen instead of silk. The look that says she never really expected you, but always hoped. Her hair is unpinned, falling like a curtain over one shoulder as she reads from a weathered book with no title. Eventually, she looks up, and there it is again, that impossible thing. You came back, she says, not as a question, not as a surprise, just this truth. You nod. The silence between you feels heavier now, but not cold, just filled with all the things you haven't said yet. She closes the book and sets it aside. I wasn't sure if you'd remember how to find me, she says. You smile. I didn't, you answer, but something did. She stands slowly, brushing the grass from her dress, and walks to you. There's no rush, no hesitation, just two people crossing a space they never fully left. When she reaches you, she doesn't touch you. Not yet. She just studies your face like it holds a secret she forgot to write down. I dreamed about you, she whispers. Not just once, often. But the you in the dream never stayed. You meet her eyes. I'm not the dream, you say. She nods. I know. But the way she looks at you says maybe this moment is better than one. The orchard is quiet, save for the breeze through the leaves and the occasional rustle of a bird shifting above you. Time behaves differently here. It always has. The rest of the palace could be burning or blooming, and this little corner would still hum at its own pace. She glances over, brushing her hair behind one ear. I thought about writing to you, she says. But where would I send it? What name would I use? What would I say? You let the silence answer that. She stops at one of the older apple trees, its branches twisted and stubborn. Her fingers trace a knot in the bark. I carried it with me. I used to climb this one as a child, she says softly. Before the lessons, before the corsets, before I had to ask permission to laugh. You watch her. She seems younger here, not in appearance, but in spirit. Like the weight of Versailles can't quite reach this far out. I wanted you to know something, she says, not looking at you yet. After that night, I didn't just go back to being her, the queen, the symbol. She turns now, finally meeting your gaze. All of it. You, the stream, the quiet, the version of me that didn't have to be anything. She steps closer. They think they know me. The way I walk, the way I smile, the way I tilt my head at dinner parties. But that wasn't mine. I borrowed it, learned it, performed it. Another step. But with you, I remembered the version I was before the stage lights. She's standing right in front of you now. And now I can't forget. You don't speak, not because you don't have anything to say, but because she doesn't need words right now. She needs presence, stillness, truth without performance. She leans forward slowly, rests her forehead gently against yours. For a long moment, nothing else matters. Not history, not scandal, not the crown, not the stories they'll tell. Just this, the warmth of shared breath, the hush of something real. You didn't plan to return, but sometimes your feet remember what your mind tries to forget. You come back weeks later, maybe months. You don't keep track anymore, not in numbers, only in feelings, in the way the air tastes different, in the way you still expect her laugh to echo around the corners of a quiet garden. Versailles hasn't changed much, not on the surface. The fountains still perform their practiced arcs. The roses still bloom too perfectly to seem real. You don't ask to enter. You don't need to. And the palace guards still stand stiff, like statues, whose purpose is more for show than safety. But something underneath has shifted. And it knows you. You remember the hidden paths, the side gates, the rhythm of steps that let you blend into the edges of this world, like a ghost returning to haunt a memory. You don't go looking for her, not directly. You just follow the pull. You end up in the old orchard behind the east wing, where once she told you no one ever bothered to look. The trees are crooked here, the fruit smaller but sweeter, the grass unruly like it hasn't been trimmed in defiance. You don't speak. You wait. She's there, not waiting, just being. She wears something simpler, now linen instead of silk. The look that says she never really expected you, but always hoped. Her hair is unpinned, falling like a curtain over one shoulder as she reads from a weathered book with no title. Eventually, she looks up, and there it is again, that impossible thing. You came back, she says. Not as a question, not as a surprise, just as truth. You nod. The silence between you feels heavier now, but not cold, just filled with all the things you haven't said yet. She closes the book and sets it aside. I wasn't sure if you'd remember how to find me, she says. You smile. I didn't, you answer, but something did. She stands slowly, brushing the grass from her dress, and walks to you. There's no rush, no hesitation, just two people crossing a space they never fully left. When she reaches you, she doesn't touch you. Not yet. She just studies your face like it holds a secret she forgot to write down. I dreamed about you, she whispers. Not just once, often, but the you in the dream never stayed. You meet her eyes. I'm not the dream, you say. She nods. I know. But the way she looks at you says maybe this moment is better than one. The orchard is quiet, save for the breeze through the leaves and the occasional rustle of a bird shifting above you. Time behaves differently here. It always has. The rest of the palace could be burning or blooming, and this little corner would still hum at its own pace. She glances over, brushing her hair behind one ear. I thought about writing to you, she says. But where would I send it? What name would I use? What would I say? You let the silence answer that. She stops at one of the older apple trees, its branches twisted and stubborn. Her fingers trace a knot in the bark. I carried it with me. I used to climb this one as a child, she says softly. Before the lessons, before the corsets, before I had to ask permission to laugh. You watch her. She seems younger here, not in appearance, but in spirit. Like the weight of Versailles can't quite reach this far out. I wanted you to know something, she says, not looking at you yet. After that night, I didn't just go back to being her, the queen, the symbol. She turns now, finally meeting your gaze. All of it. You, the stream, the quiet, the version of me that didn't have to be anything. She steps closer. They think they know me. The way I walk, the way I smile, the way I tilt my head at dinner parties. But that wasn't mine. I borrowed it, learned it, performed it. Another step. But with you, I remembered the version I was before the stage lights. She's standing right in front of you now. And now I can't forget. You don't speak, not because you don't have anything to say, but because she doesn't need words right now. She needs presence, stillness, truth without performance. She leans forward slowly, rests her forehead gently against yours. For a long moment, nothing else matters. Not history, not scandal, not the crown, not the stories they'll tell. Just this, the warmth of shared breath, the hush of something real. When she finally steps back, she doesn't break the connection. Not entirely. Her fingers graze your sleeve as if checking to see if you're still real. You are, and so is she. She walks with you again, this time deeper into the orchard, until you reach a stone bench half swallowed by ivy. You sit together, shoulders brushing, watching the sunlight flicker through leaves. She tilts her head and asks, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd met you before all this? You don't answer right away, because you know what she really means is, would it have changed anything? I think, you say finally, we'd still end up here. She smiles softly. I like that answer. You both sit in comfortable quiet, the kind that only exists between people who've already said the most important things. A bee buzzes lazily past, and she watches it go with a strange kind of envy. Sometimes I wish I could be small, she murmurs. Unnoticed, unimportant, just part of the air. You glance at her, and she looks almost embarrassed by the thought. It's silly, she adds. No one wants to disappear. You shake your head. You don't want to disappear. You just want to exist without explanation. Her eyes flick toward you wide, unguarded. For a second, she says nothing. Then she whispers, yes, exactly that. She tucks it behind her ear. There, she says. She reaches down and plucks a wildflower growing through a crack in the stone. It's crooked and imperfect, petals slightly wilted from the sun. Now I'm a little less queen and a little more wild thing. You smile. You were always more wild thing. She laughs. The kind of laugh someone gives only to one person in the world. It's quiet, private, and in that laugh is something ancient, something free, something no palace ever taught her. You lean back slightly, your shoulders still touching hers. The orchard feels like it exists outside of time, untouched by ceremony, duty, or rumor. For a moment, it feels like Yves slipped between the pages of history and found the space where truth hides. She leans her head gently against your arm. Not out of weakness, but out of peace. Just full of everything you don't need to explain. Like she's finally found somewhere soft enough to rest. I think, she says, eyes half closed, this is the first place I've ever been where no one expects me to say something clever. You glance down at her. Good, because I came here to forget what words are. She smiles again, slower this time. You don't say anything. You wait. You both fall into silence. Not awkward. Not empty. The sunlight shifts again, casting gold across her face. She closes her eyes completely now, and for a heartbeat, you think she's fallen asleep. But then she speaks, voice quiet, nearly swallowed by the breeze. They tell me I should produce an heir, that I'm more valuable if I'm a mother. They say it like it is a crown to wear on top of the one I already carry. But no one asks if I want to hold anything else. Her fingers find yours again. I don't want to belong to a legacy, she whispers. I want to belong to a moment, and this is it. This is the moment. A queen with her crown set down. A woman asking for nothing but to be. You squeeze her hand. Not to comfort her, but to anchor her. To remind her she's here, that she's not being watched. That in this orchard, she's already enough. She opens her eyes and turns to you, and for the first time in hours, there's no shadow behind them. Only light. She lets go of your hand slowly, as though letting go of a thought, not a person. She shifts to lie down across the bench, resting her head in your lap without a word. Her eyes look up toward the canopy above, lashes flickering like she's watching clouds no one else can see. Not to agree, but to show her you feel it too. You rest one hand gently against her temple, brushing her hair back, and she exhales in the kind of way people do when they finally stop pretending. You sit like that for a long time. Minutes maybe. Hours possibly. The orchard doesn't care. It keeps you in its hush. I used to think love had to be declared, she says softly. Announced with poetry or paraded through ballrooms. But I think this is the kind that matters more. She doesn't say it like a confession. She says it like a truth that just arrived and needed a place to land. You nod. I keep wondering what they'll write about me when I'm gone, she says. Will they call me foolish? Vain? Will they talk about the gowns and the sugar and the parties? She closes her eyes again, and for a while she doesn't speak. Neither do you. There's no script to follow. Or will they pretend they knew who I was all along? You run your fingers gently along her forehead. They won't know. You say, they'll guess, they'll invent. But they'll never know this. She smiles at that. This is my secret, she says. You are my secret. And for once, the idea of being a secret doesn't feel like hiding. It feels like freedom. No audience to impress. Just skin and sky and memory being made quietly enough that it might last. She doesn't open her eyes, but you feel her breathing shift slower, deeper, the rhythm of someone safe enough to let go. You watch her like you retrying to memorize more than a face, like you retrying to hold on to a moment before it slips, like everything else always has. There's a small scar behind her ear, almost hidden beneath her hair. You wonder who gave it to her. A childhood fall? A lesson learned too early? A moment she had to be stronger than anyone should have to be. You don't ask. You just notice. She stirs slightly, then speaks, her voice low and thick with the edge of sleep. Sometimes, when they talk about me in court, they act like I'm not in the room. As if I'm a story they've already decided how to tell. You nod. Even though she can't see it, she feels it. They don't know what it's like to live like this. Every word I speak gets weighed like gold, but none of it ever feels mine. She shifts again, curling toward you a little more. But you didn't ask me to be anything. I didn't want anything but you say. She smiles without opening her eyes. I think that's what scared me the most. That someone could want me without needing me to perform. A leaf drifts down from above and lands near her cheek. You brush it away with the back of your hand, barely touching her skin. I used to believe, she continues, that love was dangerous. That to love meant to risk everything. And now? You ask. Now I think. Not loving is the greater risk. You stay like that. No declarations. No promises. Just two people sitting still enough to hear the truth when it finally speaks. And in the stillness, you realize she's already begun to rewrite her own story starting from here. From this moment, from the version of herself that only you were allowed to meet. She sits up gently, not startled, not rushed. Just ready. Her eyes open and adjust to the light, but she doesn't look around. She looks at you. You both know what comes next, but neither of you wants to speak it aloud. Saying it would make it too final, too defined. So instead, you walk. Not back to the palace. Not yet. Just through the orchard. Side by side. The air has cooled, and the shadows grow longer. But it doesn't feel like an ending, more like a soft closing of something that will always stay open, just enough to return to in dreams. She tells you about a time when she ran away as a child. Not far. Just to a stables on the edge of the estate. She hid for hours behind a pile of hay, convinced no one would find her. I brought bread and a book, she says, smiling. I thought I could make a life there. You laugh gently. And why did you come back? She pauses. I miss being seen, not watched. Seen. You nod. You understand. You reach the edge of the orchard now, where the trees thin and the formal paths begin again. The ones lined with trimmed hedges and stone urns, and the quiet pressure of duty. She slows. This is the part where I usually lie, she says. Where I smile and pretend I'm not already halfway gone. You don't ask her not to go. Instead, you say, leave a part of you here. She looks at you for a long moment. Then she reaches up, takes the flower from behind her ear, and places it in your hand. I'll come looking for it someday, she says. And with that, she turns back toward the palace. You don't follow. Not because you couldn't, but because she left enough behind for you to stay. I should go back, she says. You don't ask why. You already know. Queens don't get to stay lost for too long, even when they find something worth getting lost in. But she doesn't move just yet. She reaches for your hand again, slower this time, like she's memorizing the shape of it. You gave me something, she says quietly. Something I'll keep even when I have to play her again. You nod. Was it real? She asks. You meet her gaze, and you don't flinch. It was the only real thing. She exhales, and it sounds like a small surrender. Not to you, but to the truth of what you both already know. That this won't last. That it can't. That's what made it so beautiful. She leans forward, resting her forehead against yours once more. If I see you again, she whispers, don't ask me how I am. Just look at me like this again. Like I'm not a role. Not a rumor, just a woman. You whisper, then be one now. And for one more breath, she is. You both know what comes next, but neither of you wants to speak it aloud, saying it would make it too final, too defined. So instead, you walk, not back to the palace. Not yet. Just through the orchard, side by side. The air has cooled, and the shadows grow longer. But it doesn't feel like an ending, more like a soft closing of something that will always stay open just enough to return to in dreams. She tells you about a time when she ran away as a child. Not far, just to a stables on the edge of the estate. She hid for hours behind a pile of hay, convinced no one would find her. "I brought bread and a book," she says, smiling. "I thought I could make a life there." You laugh gently. "And why did you come back?" She pauses. "I miss being seen. Not watched. Seen." You nod. You understand. You reach the edge of the orchard now, where the trees thin and the formal paths begin again. The ones lined with trimmed hedges and stone urns and the quiet pressure of duty. She slows. "This is the part where I usually lie," she says. "Where I smile and pretend I'm not already halfway gone." You don't ask her not to go. Instead, you say, "Leave a part of you here." She looks at you for a long moment. Then she reaches up, takes the flower from behind her ear, and places it in your hand. "I'll come looking for it someday," she says. And with that, she turns back toward the palace. You don't follow. Not because you couldn't, but because she left enough behind for you to stay. The orchard is empty now, but not hollow. It holds her laughter in the branches, her softness in the grass, her truth in the stone where she rested her head. The silence she left behind is warm, not cold. You sit back down on the old bench, the flower still in your palm. It's a different one than before, smaller, white, its petals just beginning to wilt. You bring it to your chest and close your eyes. You think about everything that was never said. About the way love doesn't always need a future to be real. About how sometimes the most meaningful stories are the ones never written. You go back to rooms filled with mirrors and masks, to the weight of titles, the pressure of expectation, the performance of power. But here, in this garden, she was just Marie, not Her Majesty. Just the woman who chose to be human beside you. You lie back and let the sun kiss your face. The fading warmth, a kind of echo. You let your thoughts blur. Let the memory of her voice fill the spaces your breath leaves behind. Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe this is the place you both return to again and again, in thoughts, in dreams, in the moments between everything else. The world still spins, but for now, you've stopped time. And time, for once, has thanked you. You rise from the bench, slowly, like waking from a dream you don't want to leave. The air has shifted again. The orchard hums a softer tune now, as if it too has exhaled after holding something sacred. You wander back through the trees, not with purpose, but with presence. Every step is gentle, every leaf familiar. You trace the edge of the path with your fingertips, dragging them along bark and branch like touching old pages in a book you've read many times, but never fully understood. The place she gave you, this space, it doesn't belong to maps or monarchs. It exists somewhere outside of ownership, somewhere between memory and magic. And it waits for you. You don't return to the palace. You don't return to the city. You return to yourself. The self that was made in a single night, in the warmth of shared water, whispered stories, and a heartbeat louder than duty. There are no more goodbyes now. Only what you carry. You reach the edge of the orchard. Turn once to look back, not in longing, but in gratitude. The leaves rustle just enough to make you wonder if she's watching. You smile, not because you know the ending, but because all of this was never meant to end. It was meant to live. Quietly, secretly, completely, just like her, just like you. You don't visit the orchard again, not because you've forgotten, but because it belongs to a version of you that doesn't need to be touched to be remembered. The world has changed around you. Seasons have passed. You can feel it in the wind and the tilt of the light, in the way people speak with hurried purpose now. But inside, that night still lives, unbothered, undimmed. Sometimes you catch glimpses of her in places she shouldn't be. A woman walking through a market, pausing to smell a fig like she's never seen one before. A ripple in a fountain that seems to follow the shape of her hand. A laugh in a crowd that turns your head before your brain catches up. It's not her. You know that. And yet, something of her lingers in all of it. You think maybe that's what love does. The real kind. It imprints. It echoes. It builds secret rooms inside you. Rooms you can walk into without needing a key. You never hear her name again in the way it used to be said. Not in the gossip. Not in the court. Not even in the papers that once obsessed over every flick of her fan. But once, in a small cafe near the edge of the city, you overhear a group of women speaking in hushed tones. One of them says, "She seems different these days. Softer. Like she's hiding something kind." And you smile. Because you know exactly what she's hiding. You find it one morning, long after the leaves have fallen and the orchard is probably asleep beneath winter's first breath. The paper is folded carefully. No wax seal, no crest. Just your name, written like a secret passed between fingertips. You don't open it right away. You carry it in your coat pocket for days. Through markets, down quiet streets, even as far as the coast, where the waves speak in a language older than kingdoms. You sleep with it beneath your pillow once. When you finally open it, your hands are steady, but your heart isn't. Her writing is still neat, still deliberate, but softer now, like the words were whispered as they were written. If you're reading this, I suppose I've missed you at least 100 different ways. Some of them quiet, some of them loud enough to make my hands tremble when I hold a teacup in the morning. There was no palace in this letter, no title, no pearls, only me. The version of me you held without question. The night we shared didn't end for me. It just folded itself into everything that came after, into every decision I made with a heartbeat instead of strategy, into every smile I wore that wasn't rehearsed. You gave me back something I didn't know I had misplaced. And though I may never see you again, I need you to know. I still remember how it felt to be seen. That's all. No signature. No goodbye. Just that. And it's enough. You fold the letter gently, not to hide it, but to keep it safe. You place it inside your journal, where the ink has already started to blur with time. And for the first time in weeks, you sleep soundly. Because some truths don't need to be spoken twice to stay with you forever. The days grow longer again. Spring softens the edges of the cold, and with it, something inside you thaws too. You walk slower now, not because of age, but because you've learned the joy of lingering. One afternoon, while passing a bookstore tucked between a tailor and a baker, you spot a name in a window. Her name. A biography, bound in gold. You step inside, heart steady, fingers already tingling with the strange mix of reverence and defensiveness. The book is heavy, ornate. The cover painted with a version of her that doesn't quite match the woman you remember. You flip through the pages, searching. They mention her gowns, her lavish parties, her supposed extravagance, the scandals, the court whispers, the fall from grace, but not the orchard, not the bath, not the flower behind her ear, not the silence where you both forgot who the world told you to be. And that's when it hits you. You weren't written out of her history. You were never part of that history to begin with, because you belong to a different story, one too real for ink, too tender for rumor, too sacred for pages meant for shelves. You place the book back without judgment, without anger, without sadness, because you already know the truth. They'll remember the queen, but you'll remember the woman, and that is more than enough. You write down the way the sunlight bends through windows in late afternoon, the exact sound of boots on cobblestone after rain, the scent of oranges when the peel cracks open, the shape of her laugh when she leaned too far into being human. None of it is meant for anyone else. You don't write with posterity in mind. There's no audience, no purpose, only memory, only truth. And maybe that's why it feels so holy. You take the notebook with you everywhere, to the river, to the markets. Once, even into a chapel, not because you're searching for God, but because you've started to believe the sacred might live in quieter places. You write her name just once, not in full, just the letter M, tucked into the margin beside a sentence that reads, "There are moments we live that refuse to fade." And you realize you're not trying to hold on to her. You're holding on to the version of yourself she woke up. The one who knew how to be still, to see, to feel fully. The one who didn't need anything loud to be heard. You close the notebook and tuck it back into your coat. Not to forget, but to carry. Because some loves aren't meant to be relived. Only remembered quietly, completely, forever. Not because you planned to. Not because you were seeking closure. You were simply passing through the countryside on a route you didn't know would bring you back. But your feet knew before your mind caught up. The trees are taller now, wilder, less kept. There's a quiet rebellion in the way the branches stretch freely, no longer trimmed into submission. You step through the edge, rushing past the same ivy-covered gate. It creaks, just like before, and there it is. The stone bench still waits, moss blooming along the cracks, time softening its edges. The orchard hasn't forgotten. The air smells faintly of earth and memory, the kind of scent that can't be bottled or named. You sit without hesitation. It doesn't feel like going back. It feels like catching up. You close your eyes and listen, not for voices, not for ghosts, but for the stillness that once held something tender. And there it is. That same hush, that same warmth. For a moment, you swear you feel the weight of her head in your lap again. Hear her voice saying, "I just want to belong to a moment." You smile, because she did, because you both did. And maybe that's what this place is now, not a memory, not a monument, but proof that even the briefest things can last if they're true enough. You flip to the page where her initial is written, just the letter M, nothing more. You trace it with your thumb. Then, slowly, you add a single word next to it. Enough. Not because she wasn't more than that, but because this was what you shared, what you held, what you let go of without bitterness. It was enough. You close the book, and this time, you don't tuck it away. You place it on the bench beside you, not to leave it behind, but to let it rest. Let it breathe the same orchard air that once carried her laugh. You sit a little longer, just watching the light drift through the trees. No thoughts, no stories, just breath and stillness and a body that remembers being chosen even once. Eventually, you rise. You take one last look at the bench, the book, the space that taught you how to be with someone without holding them too tightly. And then you step away, not because it's over, but because it always will be enough. Along the way, you pass a child picking wildflowers with a basket that's already too full. She glances up at you, curious. "Do you live here?" she asks. You pause, then smile. "I used to." It's not a lie. She looks satisfied with the answer, nods once, and returns to her flowers. You keep walking, not looking back, not because the orchard isn't worth another glance, but because what matters most from it is already inside you. When you reach the road, the wind picks up, a small gust, like a whisper brushing your collar. It carries the scent of something sweet, something blooming. You close your eyes, just for a breath. You don't see her. You don't hear her. But you feel her. In the hush between footsteps. In the warmth behind your ribs. In the way your chest lifts slow and full, like your body finally believes it's safe to let go of what it's been holding. And for the first time in a long time, you realize you don't need the story to continue to know it was real. The room is simple. Books stacked in uneven piles. A chair worn soft by years of being lived in. A window cracked open just enough to let in the night air. You sit and stare at the flame, and it flickers in a way that reminds you of her. Not because it's bright, but because it dances even when no one's watching. You take a deep breath. You don't reach for the letter again. You don't open the journal. You just sit, still and whole, and let the quiet wrap around you the way her presence once did. There's a painting on the wall, a gift from a friend who never knew about the orchard or the bath, or the way your life split into a before and after. The brushstrokes are loose, dreamlike, and in the corner, almost hidden, is a blur of blue and gold. It reminds you of her dress, of that night, of the way something temporary can leave a mark deeper than permanence ever could. You lean back and close your eyes, and in the silence, the world feels full. Not crowded, just full. You don't need to relive it. You just need to remember. Still and clear. A bath that exists outside of time. The surface unbroken. The room quiet. You're not sure where you are, only that it feels familiar, safe, sacred. And then, she's there. Not as a queen. Not even as the girl who ran through gardens or whispered truth into the dark, but simply as herself. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. She steps into the water beside you, and for a moment, it feels like the world has turned soft again. The kind of soft that only comes once if you're lucky. She touches your hand, and it's not memory. It's presence. You look at her, and she looks back, and in that gaze is everything that was never said out loud. All the goodbyes that didn't hurt. All the love that didn't ask for proof. All the moments that didn't need to be more than they already were. You wake up with your hand resting gently over your heart, right where the pressed flower used to be. And for the first time in a long time, you don't miss her. You just feel thankful, because once you were there, and once was enough. You rise slowly, the way people do when they've slept well, not just in body, but in memory. The air is still. The world is waiting, but there's no rush to meet it. At your window, the trees sway in rhythm with something older than time. A bird lands on the sill and looks at you as if it knows. You nod to it without thinking, and it flutters away. In the corner of the room, on a small table near the chair, sits the notebook. You don't open it. You don't need to. Everything that mattered has already settled into the folds of your life. You pour yourself tea, let it steep too long, and smile at the bitterness. It tastes real, lived in, like something earned. As you sip, you glance at the doorway, not expecting her, but not mourning her absence either, because she's not gone. Not really. She's in the stillness. She's in the softness you now carry in your voice. She's in the way you choose silence over noise. And you are not the same as you were before the bath. Because once upon a night, in a palace that history painted with gold and grief, you found something truer than power, gentler than legacy, and quieter than time. You found her, and she found you. And that is where the story ends. Not with an exclamation, not with a tragedy, just with a breath, one shared breath, between two people who chose to be real. If only for a night,